Yes.
Do I look at this?
Yeah. Yes, you can. You can look at me. Okay, it's Maya Palmer here, social media journalist at the FT, and today we are previewing the summer budget, the UK summer budget. We already did one budget this year, but we have another one coming up, and I am just grabbing a few minutes with FT commentator John McDermott, who's going to tell us about what we can expect. John is with us, thanks. Give us a little summary to start with. What are we expecting in the budget tomorrow?
Well, this is George Osborne's 7th budget, but it's the first budget from a Conservative majority government since 1996. It's also the first budget of the Parliament. All of those things together suggest that it's going to be a big one. Politically, the Chancellor is going to be trying to frame the next 5 years, trying to make sure that the discussion is about employment, low taxation, fiscal conservatism. But economically, he's also going to try and shape the contours of the British state, which I think is where it gets really, really interesting.
Okay. So what specific measures are we looking at? I think we've, in the FT, previewed quite a lot of the, that we're going to see tax credit cuts, welfare cuts in general. Are there any particular measures that we're expecting?
Like all good budgets, this one has been kind of drip-fed through the media over the past few days. The big thing to look out for, as always, are the public spending numbers. This still forms the backdrop to what the Chancellor has to do. The job of returning Britain to surplus is only roughly half done. So first look at those numbers. But yeah, you're right, there's been a lot of pre-announcements, and we've heard things about tax credits. We've also heard things about some liberalisations of potentially of savings and potentially of things like licensing hours as well, which are all part of this idea that I think the Chancellor is going to try and push tomorrow of Britain becoming a lower tax, more liberal economy and removing some of the shibboleths of the new Labour era.
Sorry, I'm just going to say here, I've had a couple of messages in.
My head too massive.
No, I think a lot of people are saying the connection on this is bad, so apologies for that. We'll look into this and we'll try to get this this sorted out for tomorrow, because we'll be doing a lot more on the budget. I'm assuming that some people are managing to watch this, because we're also getting some hearts being sent our way. So I think it's not terrible for everyone. So we'll carry on. But I promise we will look into the technical issues. Anyway, but back to John for a moment. If you do have any questions for John, send them to me on the screen and I'll make sure that I ask them. So we've talked about the tax cuts. I think one of the questions that I keep being asked is this just a budget for the wealthy then? I mean, is this going to be all about cutting benefits for poorer people?
It's about much more than that. But like every budget, and especially budgets in the early phases of parliaments, just after elections, there are going to be some bad news, or there are going to be some announcements for people who lose out that they didn't necessarily want to make during the election, but are going to try and sneak in the first few weeks of the parliament. Is it a budget for the rich? Well, of course the Chancellor would say, no, it's a budget for working people. And this is part of his effort to, in a way, turn the Conservatives into the Labour Party. That is, the small L Labour Party. And during the election, he and the Prime Minister made a big deal about how we're going to be on the side of those who want to get on, who want to work, want to own a house. So you're going to hear a lot more about that tomorrow. But he's got to square that at the same time with making what we all expect are some cuts to tax credits. And it's going to be really difficult to cut, say, $5 billion out of tax credits, top-ups to wages, and make life economically better for, say, single mothers. So there's going to be a big gap, perhaps, between the rhetoric and the reality, especially around those measures.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to sort of convince people that you are the party of the working poor when working tax credits are going to see.
Well, that's one of the questions. I mean, I don't know if it's too technical for Periscope, but tax credits are the catch-all name that are given to a thing called the child tax credit, which you get if you're not necessarily working, and then the working tax credit, which, as the name would suggest, you do get if you're working. And most of the noise seems to be that the former will be the one that gets cut. So you could perhaps still make the argument that you're on the side of working people if working tax credit is left relatively unscathed. But still, given that there might well be announcements on housing benefit also, it's not necessarily the best time to be a non-working single mother in social housing. So.
Excellent. So a lot of this has been drip-fed. Are there any areas where we could genuinely get some surprises tomorrow? I know I'm asking you to do the impossible and predict a surprise.
The old unknowns.
Yes.
I think the two areas that I would look at are around the liberalisation of the British economy and the decentralisation of the British economy. One of the things that frustrates the Chancellor is this idea that Britain is too slow, too statist. So I think you will see him going further than many people have already reported on devolution to cities. And I think that you will also see some liberalisations perhaps around savings given the success of his pension reforms the last time. Some of this has been drip-fed, but it would not surprise me if he made it more concrete and bigger and more radical than many expect. But then again, I'm often wrong.
And I guess we just have to see tomorrow. Final question. Greece is obviously overshadowing almost all of our news flow here at the FT. Is that going to make its way into the Chancellor's speech in some way? I mean, is it relevant for the UK budget?
Yeah, I saw that yesterday. Greece was the most read articles 1 to 6, and number 7 was Taylor Swift. And it's probably more likely he's going to mention Greece than Taylor Swift tomorrow.
You will have to see, actually, whether the budget managed to knock any of that off the top 10 list.
Maybe, probably, hopefully. Is Greece relevant to the UK budget? Not really, tangentially, but of course it will be mentioned, or I would be very surprised if some reference is not made, because he will be able to draw the comparison between the chaos that is going on in Greece, and he will argue that this is what happens when a country can't get hold of its finances. One may argue that it's also what happens when a country does a whole host of other things that don't necessarily apply to Britain, such as join a common currency area. But he has made this political point before, and I am sure he will make it again.
Excellent. Well, we'll look forward to that. John McDermott, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who's watched the Periscope broadcast. We're going to do more tomorrow, so if you want to tune in. One thing that does happen at the FT... we will have people who can tell you about what it means.
Doesn't normally happen.
Well, we have experts. We have even more experts. And there are people who can talk about the specifics of implications for your tax, for your pension, various different tax scenarios. We can talk about that bigger macroeconomic picture and so on. And we're going to try to tap into a lot of those people tomorrow. So do stay tuned in. It will probably be sometime between 2 and 3 o'clock UK time tomorrow. So hoping to see some of you then.